I want to start off by asking a rhetorical question. And we live in a time of questions that nobody's asking enough about. Silly questions like, for example, why do we say please and thank you? Most people don't really know the answer to that question. They think it's because it's being polite, but it's not. That's not the main reason. Other questions like, why is it that no two democracies have ever fought each other in the history of the world? People don't ask that question, but it's a fact, and we should know why. But here's a rhetorical question that I don't want to discuss the answer to right now. The question is, why is sex so pleasurable? Okay, why? In fact, it's so pleasurable that on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 30. Why is it a 30? Right? So let's reserve that discussion to the end. But I just want to float that out there, and please make sure that to remind me if I forget that one particular question. All right, tonight we are going to make babies. Okay? Sound good? We're going to make a lot of Jewish babies in particular. I see the men smiling. That's good. That's really good. But we're going to make a lot of babies, and I'll tell you why. Good people need to have a lot of kids. That's something that my mother told me, of all people. She said, the world needs good people. Forget about Jewish people for a moment. We do need a lot more Jews. We need more good people. Now, if I had my way, I'd have 6 kids. I have 3. And I wish we could have a 4th. My wife is now regretting that we didn't have a 4th. How many of you, I don't know if you could raise hands, you could just raise hands, I'll see it that way. How many of you want to have kids? All right. Everyone seems to want to have kids. Is there somebody who doesn't want to have kids? All right. One guy's iffy. Okay. How many of you want to have more than 2 kids? Oh man, this is great. I love it. I'm gonna go for this.
We've been teaching them well.
All right. How many of you would somehow, if you could, if Hashem gives you it, then you could have 4 kids? Wow, this is great. Well, I guess we are going to make babies tonight. I really like this a lot. This is wonderful. Okay, so why are we talking about this particular area? So many of the people out there, I get a little bit of feedback here. Just a little bit of feedback. If you were to ask the birth rate in the early 1900s, about more than 100 years ago, was about almost 4 children per woman. It's a remarkable thing. Now the birth rate is 1.8. It's a bad thing. In the Jewish community, unfortunately, we got the same problem. We more or less reflect the American community as well. We need more Jewish babies. Okay, so I'm just going to get that out there right now. I want to really focus on that for the time being, just what the need is. And then we'll discuss the why. And by the end of this, you'll be so excited, hopefully, to pursue this relationship, to pursue a relationship, to have babies. Maybe you'll even start tonight. Who knows? Okay. Now, the question is, why is it that we've gone from 4 babies per woman to 1.8? And of course, that means a lot of women are just not having babies at all. Now, normally speaking in a crowd, I'd be a little rhetorical. Does anyone have a suggestion? Okay? Does anyone, can I ask that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Does anyone have a suggestion as to why that is the case?
Education.
Okay. 2 other proposals. Let's see. Education is one of them.
question being why women are having less kids?
Why people are having less kids? I mean, couples, obviously. So, why? One was education.
Are they getting married later?
Married later, okay.
I was going to say maybe cost of living has gone up.
Cost of living, okay. Those are three classic answers. Let's talk about the cost of living thing first. Okay, there are many reasons why people think that the cost of living is a good reason to do that. Listen, and it's true. If you looked at the appropriate statistics, the Pew study showed that a couple raising one child today can look forward to paying at least $350,000 per child in today's dollars before college. Okay? And you can say that's a lot of money, and it is. But guess what? It's actually a lot cheaper in yesterday's dollars. In the old days of the 1900s and such, things were much more expensive relative to what they are today. Who knew, right? If you were to buy a computer, for example, we're all operating with computers today. If you were to buy a computer, 40 years ago, it would cost you the equivalent in today's dollars of $15,000. Okay? If you were to have a telephone, there's some things that don't cost you money at all now. For example, taking pictures, right? I mean, it really doesn't cost you anything. There are a tremendous number of cost savings, actually. You're making more money and you're spending less. So cost of living is actually not a good reason to have kids. Another reason that I hear is somebody said about having kids later. That is a truism, but that relates to careers. Women are choosing career over family. So careers first, you've heard this before, and family is second. Family is something that they'll do if they get to it. I put it to you that you should have family first, and then the career if you get to it. My favorite and my hero, actually, is Sandra Day O'Connor, the Supreme Court Justice appointed by Reagan in the 80s. She was 42 before she even started her legal career. She had 4 kids before that. She had a whole family. And she said, okay, I'm going to start this legal thing. Now, you don't have to be a Supreme Court Justice, of course. She just was remarkably successful, remarkably intelligent. But you can still have a career after having kids. First things first, focus on the family. Now, women, this is to the women out there. I want you to hear this phrase and never forget it. Women own the 20s. You own the 20s. It's yours. Men own the 30s and beyond. Does everyone understand what I'm saying here?
No, please explain.
Okay. What you'll find as a woman, well, I'll speak to the guys first. In your 20s, men, you will have trouble dating. The reason why is that the women, let's say you're 26 years old and you're interested in, you see a very cute girl, Jewish, she's 26 too. Somehow, she doesn't seem as interested in you. And even though you might be good looking, intelligent, and you have a career in mind and everything else, she is not interested in you. And the reason why is that she's looking over your shoulder to a guy who's 30 plus. That's why. Now, when you turn 31 or so, I see a lot of men nodding their heads. When you turn 31 or so, everything changes. All of a sudden, that woman who is 26, 25, she's looking at you now. It's a lot easier for you to date. Okay? In a sense, you own the 30s. Women own the 20s. All right? Now, and it's a hard fact of life, and I wish it weren't so, but it is what it is. Sometimes when I describe this to women, they get a little bit insulted, and I hope anyone gets insulted here. That's not the mission, and I don't really care. The point is, you have to understand that the 20s, for you women, It's your prime. It's the best opportunity, not just to meet a really great guy, but also to make babies. Okay, this is a biological fact. I've seen too many women, and now I'm old enough to have seen it go through all the stages, and it's always the same game plan. It always happens. A woman says, well, I'm 25 now, I'm going to settle on my career, I'll be 34, and then at that point I'll look for a nice guy and we'll be all set. And then she looks around, and first of all, it's very difficult to find a nice guy. And then even if she does find a nice guy, it's difficult to get pregnant, even if she gets married at 34. Time is a very important factor in the relationship issue, okay? Very, very important. Now, this is a message to men. Don't waste a woman's time, okay? If you're in a relationship with a woman and you're just kind of there because it just seems comfortable, you've known her for a long time, and you find that it's 1, 2, 5 years goes by, and you still haven't decided to marry her, you need to let her go. Fish or cut bait, as they say. It's not fair to the woman. A woman's time is precious. Biologically, romantically, everything. Don't waste her time. Now, I made the mistake when I was much younger of wasting a woman's time, and I regret it. For 5 years we're together, I kind of figured out I was never going to marry her. Thankfully for her, she found a very nice guy. She had a couple of kids. She's very happy. So everything worked out great. But I realized I was wasting her time. Don't waste a woman's time. All right. Now, one of the other issues is, like we were saying before, was that if you get married late, have kids late, then you'll have fewer kids. That's true. Now, and that's just simple biology. Start as early as you can. It'll work out. Another reason that people say that there are more kids today, well, because there's contraception. Everything's great. Now people are not having the kids that they otherwise wouldn't have wanted because of contraception, condoms, and so on. That argument doesn't fly. It's not because people were simply stupid with their contraception back in the 1900s. It's not that at all. There's a shocking thing to tell you here. People had contraception back in the 1900s. They found ways. If they didn't want a child, they found ways. Okay, it's not as if they were just willy-nilly going to bed and suddenly getting their wives knocked up. It just didn't happen that way. So that's not the answer. Another answer is that I've heard is that they need a lot of kids to help with the farm. Have you heard that before? That's the reason why they had 5 kids, because they need to help with the farm. Okay, that argument doesn't fly either, because back in the day, you don't need your kids to help with their farm. You could hire somebody to help you with their farm. Kids are not a very efficient use of labor when you think about it. Likewise, it doesn't explain all the people who had a lot of kids who were not farmers and otherwise were living in very squalid and very small conditions. Okay? Anybody else for any other reason why they think that's the case? That there are fewer?
Beer?
What's that? What is it?
People think that we need to stop having kids because we're overpopulated and we're destroying the world.
Yes. That is a major reason why people are thinking it. But you're right, but it's usually the excuse why they're not having kids in the first place. So they decide not to have kids, and then they rationalize it by saying, I'm doing this for the benefit of mankind. So you're right, but that argument was always there. Always. And I like that way of thinking, that you thought about this. There is one major reason, and I guess I'll get to the answer.
Can I give one last guess?
Yeah, please.
I read an article a while ago that said, shockingly, we're having less sex nowadays than people were before.
Yes. That is correct. That is correct.
That's the reason? Wow.
It's not because there's less sex, although that's true. It begs the question, why are they having less sex, right? And I'll get to that in a moment. Please don't make me forget that one, because it's a good question, good point. They are having less sex. The main reason why people are having fewer and fewer kids, in fact, it's the one unifying reason. It's because people don't believe in God anymore. That's it. That's the only reason why. I mean, think about it. And I ask my atheist friends all the time. I have a few of them. I used to be an atheist myself, so I know how an atheist thinks. My wife and I, we went to the park recently, and we saw a nice couple. They were clearly 34, 35. They had one kid, and he was, they put him in a baby Bjorn, those little things. And we got to talking, and my wife said, oh, he's so cute. He's 6. How old is he? 6 months. Okay, are you still feeding it? All those things, sleeping through the night, all the typical questions. We got to know them. We got to know their names. So it was really about a half an hour discussion. And then finally I simply said, tell me something. Why'd you have this kid? And it was the funniest thing. The woman who had the baby in the baby Bjorn turns to her husband and says, yeah, honey, why did we have this kid? People don't know why they have kids. Why would you have a kid if you're an atheist? If there's no God in your life, there is no reason to have children at all. Why? You live only for yourself. There's no heaven or hell. There's no generation in the future to really care about. And as one of our friends here said, you're saving the planet somehow. So why have a kid?
That's not true at all. Why did you make that assumption?
Why did I make what assumption?
That...
I like this.
Why'd you make that assumption that there's no reason to not have kids if you don't believe? Like, why would you say such a thing?
Okay. Why? Okay, imagine yourself as an atheist. Okay? Imagine there's no God in your life at all. Tell me why you should have kids.
Because I care about legacy.
Why do you care about legacy?
Because I think that there might, even if there isn't a God, that there might be something else that means more beyond my existence. And you know what? Just because you can't think of any reasons doesn't mean that they don't exist. What kind of reasoning is that?
Well, the facts support my statement. Atheists tend not to have children. So that's part of the reasoning, but I don't just go to the facts of that. The fact is, an atheist really doesn't understand. So there's no reason, if you are an atheist, to have any children. I mean, look, let's think rationally for a second. Let's imagine you decide to have a kid. The cost of having a kid, we just talked a little bit about that. It's not just the cost financially. It's the fact that you give up so much of your life. You have to do the diaper change. You have to do the feeding late at night. You're arguing with your wife all the time about how to raise the kid. There's a lot less nookie in your life, of course. You can't go on vacation with your wife. There's not a lot of freedom. And then, of course, you can kiss your retirement either bye-bye or delayed a lot more. And then, of course, there's college, right? Then there's the fact that the kids, well, you have the teenage years and they hate you, right? And you never know how they're going to turn out. It's a lousy investment when you think about it. Why would you have a kid? If your goal as an atheist if your belief as an atheist is that all that matters is what we have here, we're all products of random selection, and we're all random products of nature, why bother with having a kid? And not only that, but the thrill of having sex and chasing an orgasm, we'll be using a lot of words today like that. If it's all there, it's very easy. Why not? Why would you bother having a kid? The old days, you would have kids, even if you didn't have that much a God in your life, because frankly, women would not have sex before marriage. And this was the kind of quid pro quo. You want to have sex? Great, but I want a family. And by and large, you believed in God anyway. So nobody has really explained to me as an atheist why they really want kids. The possibility that they may be leaving a legacy, I don't buy it. My brother's an atheist.
Right.
He has not been able to answer that question either. Go ahead. Somebody was...
Sorry, I came in a little bit late. Sorry,
Sure.
I had another meeting I was on, but I think I'm caught up. I have some friends and family who are atheists and who either have had kids or want to have kids or are planning on having kids. And to them, they don't believe, like for us, like we as Jews who believe in God believe that all of our values and our beliefs and the things that we're supposed to do are God's guidance to us on how to live our best lives and how to make the world a better place, like as he knows how to do and he's taught us how to do. But I was just talking to some cousins of mine about this who are atheists and are planning on having a kid. For them, it's that they have a lot of those same values. Just to them, they see them as human values and not values that are from God, and they still have that that natural urge to want to care for another life and to want to give unconditional love and receive unconditional love. And,
Right.
And yeah, they still have that, and they still want to have a child that they can give everything to, and they can teach things to, and they can give all their love to, and they can provide for, because it makes them feel good, it makes the child feel loved, and it's those natural human feelings.
Right.
Also,
Yeah.
I just want to add that, even with atheists, they can be spiritual as well, right? So you don't necessarily have to say, I believe in a certain God. You can just be spiritual and kind of believe in the universe. And oftentimes people who are spiritual also believe in similar values that are incorporated in Judaism as well.
Right, right. Well, look, I mean, I guess I'll address your question first before I address the first lady. If you believe in spirituality, then you're believing in some sort of structure in the universe, which is great. I kind of like those people. They're fine. But it's different than being an atheist. An atheist will tell you that there is everything was random. It just happened organically, and this is the way and all this stuff about values and morality and such, that's a social construct that we are living, continuing on with as we proceed in life. Now back to, I'm sorry, I forget, I didn't get your name. What's that?
No.
Becca, okay, great, Becca. Thank you for your very intelligent comment. Your argument is what I call the echo argument. What do I mean by that? I mean that there are certain things that we do that are echoes of the past. But like all echoes, echoes die at some point. For example, no one here, or very few people here, let's put it this way, and certainly most of America, the idea of not having premarital sex, or for refraining from sex before marriage, that's your grandmother's values, maybe your great-grandmother's values at this point, right? But if you were to ask my parents' generation, they're in their late 80s now, they would say, yeah, it was very common to have no premarital sex. That was an echo of their past. Now, the idea of having no premarital sex is gone. Here's another thing, as an example. It's a small thing, but it's an important thing. I'm not wearing a tie. As far as I can see, I don't see any of the guys wearing ties here either. Right? Okay. The two guys who are with us are not wearing ties. Okay. In the old days, everyone wore a tie. And to the extent that I might wear a tie in a formal setting, it's because it's an echo of a previous generation that said this is the way things are done. You should wear a tie. And eventually you'll say nobody's doing it, and I'm not going to do it. Okay. So I put it to you that children, the idea of having children, this notion of I feel like I should have a child, it is an echo. And one generation from now, one, not two, one generation, it will be customary to not have any children at all. Okay? You'll be unusual if you have one or two children. And they'll be designer children too. I mean, you'll be able to choose the genes and everything else that you like. I don't like that future, but if we continue on this way, it will certainly be a fact. They will not want to have children. We're already seeing it, by the way. This is in my book. I've researched it to death. There is something called birth strike. Has anyone heard about that? Okay, birth strike is coming to America. Birth strike started in London, and then now it's all over England. This notion that we don't want to participate in the warming of the planet or the destruction of the planet with all its precious resources. Therefore, I'm going on strike. I'm not going to have any babies. I, as a woman, am vowing not to have any children. How about you? That's the notion. And now it's coming here. So you'll be hearing this language a lot. And then you'll be hearing that if you have a child, you are selfish. Get that? You see how that things have turned around? In the old days, you would think that if you had a child, that you're the selfless one. You're the good guy. You're giving up all your time and your money and resources. And now they're calling you the selfish one for having one. You'll see. Okay. There are many reasons why this, but the ultimate reason why we
Can
have...
I add something and jump before you carry on?
Say again?
Yeah, can I jump in right?
Before I change. Okay, go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, just to mention the idea of like people may look at you as selfish. I mean, we lived in different places, and we have 4 kids, and I'm expecting another one.
Fantastic.
And so people people would tell me when we lived in Oregon, for example, or most people were very positive. I mean, it's not like I asked for people's opinion, but people sometimes can share their opinion without asking me, and they can be very negative, like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. I mean, it's not good for the world, or you're not thinking.
That's because you're in Oregon.
So yeah, I mean, I totally relate to what you said.
Yeah, it's true. People say this. Look, we have 3 children, like I mentioned, and I remember we were telling the good news to my mother-in-law, my wife's mom. She's lovely. She's great. And we said, hey, guess what? My wife is, Stacy's pregnant. And there was this long pause, and my mother-in-law did not like it. And she said, I'm shocked. I'm just shocked. And she felt it was wrong. And I picked up the phone, and my wife was just devastated. And I said, give me the phone, please. And I said, Sandra, I'm going to hang up the phone now. I'm going to then call you back up, and I'm going to say exactly the same thing, that Stacy's pregnant. And we'd like a different response. And so that's exactly what we did. And I said, guess what? Stacy's pregnant. And she said, that's great. She tried. But she really didn't want us to have more than 2 kids. It was an interesting thing. There's this notion that you can only have a certain, like there's an allotment of 2 kids, tops. Preferably a boy and a girl, and you're all set. What more do you need? To me, I see a family that has 6 children, and I envy them. I think it's wonderful, and I say mazel tov to them if they're Jewish, and congratulations if they're not. These people are doing God's work. It's very hard work, but there's no way anyone's going to convince me that an atheist would want to have that many kids, or to even have more than 1 or 2 kids at most. They just don't see it through. And I'm telling you, it's an echo, and very soon, people will just stop having kids altogether. People are not getting married for the same reason. Now look, I mean, that's related to the marriage issue, because we're talking about relationships here. People are not getting married. They see it as a piece of paper, and therefore, why have it? Not only that, but sex is plentiful. Now with Tinder and Bumble and so many other different dating sites. What's that? Hinge, yeah. There's a lot of these different. I did tons of research on this. There's so much sex out there that if you have no interest in kids, and I'm speaking mostly to the guys here, it's out there for you. It's really no problem. Women are giving it up, so to speak, very easily. And the older they get, the more easy it is. It's destroying relationships.
I'm sorry. Can I say something?
Of course.
I don't mean to be rude or anything, but I feel that the way that you're speaking about women in general can be a bit hurtful to the women in this Zoom. Just in general, the way that you're speaking about them seems very like kind of looking down on women who make any different choice besides the one that you're seeing as correct. And it's not that I don't want to have kids. It's not that I don't want to have kids before 35 or any of those things. It's not that inherently any of those things that you're saying are wrong, but the delivery of them feels a bit harsh to take in as a woman who respects other women for their decisions and for their life choices. I know a lot of wonderful atheists who have had lots of kids and had wonderful lives. I know a lot of I know people who have 5 or 6 siblings and aren't friends with any of them.
Right.
I have a brother that I'm best friends with, and I got lucky. It was just the 2 of us, and we had a great upbringing. So
right.
I think it's to each their own, and I don't quite know the point of kind of singling out people based off of their religion and their choices. It seems like a little bit like there's confirmation bias involved.
Okay, so there's a bit to unpack there, but I'll try to address 2 of the points that I heard there.
Sorry.
No, it's okay, no problem at all, and I appreciate that. Look, we live in a time where we have to be a little bit more direct. I'm now 50, I'm almost 57 years old, and I've seen so many women make the same mistake. And everyone told them, mostly their women friends, by the way, don't worry about it, you got plenty of time. We don't have to like it. I wish God could give us 20 more years of easy fertility for a woman. But Hashem doesn't give us that. So being direct about the facts is very important here. And we're not being direct. There's a lot of things that in our social world where we're not being direct. And it may come off as, I think you use the word rude, and I don't mind you saying that, by the way, but I'm just saying it as a fact. Okay, we need to be more direct. Women need to understand that, and men, and I also said things about men. Men need to understand the value of relationships, and women need to understand that time is a big factor for them if they want to have kids, and if they want to marry a quality guy. The sooner you do it, not in terms of being 20 or something, but if you're 27, 28, 29, and you don't have a boyfriend in sight, please work on it. Really see it as a full-time gig. Don't just kind of go dating here and there and have a 2-month relationship here, a 4-month relationship there, because he seems to be, it'll be fun. See it as a full-time job. Okay, there's some realities in biology that we just have to deal with it. And trying to dance around it with pretty words, it's not helping. It just won't. All right, so I want to move on to a different topic, if that's okay with you. One of them is about the nature of how relationships are changing. People are not actually having as many relationships as you may think. The relationships are changing, but it's not the classic male-female one-to-one relationship that we often think about. We're seeing a fraying at the edges. What do I mean by that? Polyamory is becoming a big deal. Now, I predicted this about 5 years ago, but where I was wrong is how fast it would come. It's here much faster than I thought. There are loosening of laws on many different sexual parameters and romantic parameters. I'm not even talking about gay marriage now. I'm not even talking about transgenderism. But I am talking about how we view family and how we view relationships.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm just stuck on something you mentioned earlier, which is like to women, saying that you should view having a boyfriend as like a full-time job. And I think that
the search for a good quality guy should be a full-time job. Yes.
Right. So I'm sure I'm not the only woman feeling this way, but I feel like I was also a little bit offended at that comment.
Yeah, that's the problem. if we dance around the offended language, then we're just not going to get anywhere. I'm saying not you and I. I'm saying that we as a society, we have to focus on.
So I just
hang on for a second. There are certain realities that we must deal with. Okay, so look, I went to law school, and I remember this one woman. It was criminal law, and they were dealing with issues of rape. And a woman raised her hand, and she said, "I'm offended by that word. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. The prospect of rape is just so horrendous to me, and I'd rather we don't talk about it." But sadly, rape is a reality in life, and it's not right, it's horrible and everything else, and it's a crime. And you might expect to talk about it.
I do want to talk about it.
Sorry?
I do want to talk about it. And something that I wanted to bring up, I mean, I'm glad that you shared that, but I just wanted to bring up this idea of a superwoman ideal. And the reason why I bring it up is because I'm studying to become a clinical psychologist. Right. And one of my specialties is in women's health. So there's something called a superwoman ideal. And the concept is that women are often pressured to be great mothers, to be physically appealing, to, be pressured to find their soulmate, to get married, have children, and at the same time to have a fulfilling career, to be financially stable, and all of those things. Right.
I don't know if you were there in the beginning of this talk, but when I said, because I don't believe that you can have, having known a lot of women, not I'm talking about dating, I'm talking about just knowing a lot of friends who are women, so many of them regret having a full-time career, dedicating everything to their career, and then discovering that they can't really give full time to their family. It is, you said the superwoman. I've never said anything about a superwoman. You did. And that's okay. I didn't say be everything to everybody and be the perfect person. I am saying make sure to check your priorities. If you want a family, then treat that as a priority. Your career should, in that case, be second. If you want career to be your first choice, fine. It's a free country. But I'm simply telling you that hang on for a second. I just want to tell you, I'm simply telling you there are realities out there, and you're bringing in a different topic that I didn't discuss, and that's okay. That's your issue. But I'm simply saying to you that if you want a lot of kids, and you want a high quality guy, work on it on the earlier side. Don't wait until you're 35. You will be making a big mistake. You will. And I've known far too many women. Hold on. I've known far too many women who say exactly this, and then they reach 35, 37, 40, and then the quality of the guys that they're dating, not as good. Okay? I'm sorry. Right. I wish it were completely different. It's a reality.
And I appreciate you sharing that with me. The only reason why I brought that up is because as a woman, today in 2020, I'm also encouraged to pursue an education and to be financially stable because that's important.
Right.
And so I just wanted to bring that up because oftentimes when people bring up this biological time clock, this idea that women need to find, their husband in their 20s, their mid-20s, when we're also in grad school and we're also trying to invest financially and support ourselves in the future, it kind of brings up this dynamic that puts guilt on a lot of women. I'm
not making you feel guilty. You can interpret that to mean guilt as you like. That's not from me. Okay, that's from you. You're internalizing something there. Well, if you have an issue and you want it to be, hang on for a second. If you have an issue about this, that's fine.
Stop.
Hold on. If you have an issue about it, then it's a social issue. I'm sorry. It's just that's the reality. I'm simply saying, guys, and you don't have to like it. And I respect you all. I like you all, but the reality is, there are so many women out there that are saying they regret. I don't want any of you to have that same sort of regret. Now, some of you will say, this guy, I heard him, I didn't like what he had to say, and I pursued my career and such like that. And later on, they'll say, oh yeah, that guy, he was right. I'm not the first guy to say this. This is not a unique thing for me to say. to focus on meeting a quality guy and making that a full-time issue for yourselves. Okay? God willing, you'll be able to have a great career and a great family at the same time. Okay? It's just biological stuff that we have to think about.
Can I say something really quick? I
Sure.
respect your opinion, and I appreciate you explaining to us from your experiences and how you've seen things have changed over the years. I can understand that there's definitely been a shift in our environments and the way we date. Rabbi Jack and Shira have done a really wonderful job of kind of opening our eyes, at least my own, to the ways that dating can be healthier and better and more productive. But I think it's done in a very positive outlook, and maybe if there's a way to shift that perspective, I'm trying to find the positive in what you're saying so that I can take it in and embrace it. Right.
I'd like to move on to the different topics. So that's exactly on that point.
Because I agree with Natasha. Like, I think what he's mainly saying is that if you want to, you can put career first. That's amazing. That's awesome. But realize that there is that biological clock, and that if you want a family, it's kind of like in our 20s, early 30s, it's just how biology is, that you kind of have to make that priority if you want to, like, find a good partner.
Right. That's all it is.
That's
all it is.
How do you recommend that, like, women in their 20s have a full-time job where they're able to financially support themselves, able to work enough so that they can work up, because it's a very, very, very competitive job market in every industry, and be able to take care of themselves, both like mentally and physically, and like still have time to do things that they enjoy to, you know, help with their sanity in this crazy world, and do all of that and still put, you know, finding a husband first with all of those things that are really our underlying basic needs.
Right, it's a great question. Look, I don't think it could be done.
Can I chime in too?
Yeah, sure, it's fine. I just don't think superwoman is a strong word, and I don't think anyone could be a superwoman. I don't think anyone could be a superman. It's impossible. There are certain proclivities that a man has and a woman has, yes, but I do think that a woman should seek to be financially stable. But if she wants to value a family, and then make it, if she wants to prioritize family, then prioritize family. That's as simple as that. And if you want it all, it's very hard. It just simply is very hard. And that's a social issue. That's not my fault. It's not anyone's fault here. It is society's fault. We have changed the dynamic. We are in a social change now. It's very dramatic. And we will look back on it and say, okay, maybe it was a good thing, maybe it was a bad thing. But the family's breaking down. Relationships are changing dramatically. And we're having far fewer kids. So you decide whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Okay? These are just, I'm relaying the facts. That's it.
Right. So I'm asking, like, if I'm saying I'm a 25-year-old woman, I'm trying very hard to be financially, you know, more than stable, to be, you know, to do very well financially and to be independent and be able to, like, completely support myself. And doing that involves a lot of work. It involves putting in all of the work that a man puts in, and usually even more, because it's harder for a woman. And so I'm just asking, really, like, what advice would you give me in trying to do all of that?
Guys, I can only answer one question at a time, and it's a fair question. She asked me before, and I really need to answer it. What I advise, work hard, but just make time for yourself to date and really, you know, give yourself, you know, a good hour at least a day to really kind of focus on what you want in a man. And really just strive for that. It's like anything else. Look, I'm a full-time lawyer. I'm a full-time father. I have a radio show, and I write books. And I also give lectures, too. So how do I do it? I do it by carving out half an hour here, 20 minutes there, 10 minutes there. And I've got 3 kids. I mean, it's a lot of effort on my part. And it depends on what you value. So instead of me watching late-night TV, or binge watching on Game of Thrones, I write books. And the same sort of thing has to happen here. It's just, all I'm asking is that instead of going to the club at night or whatever it is, or binge watching Game of Thrones, to use my own example, just focus on dating. That's it. It's all about prioritizing, just like you might for exercise. A lot of us exercise, right? I carve out time for that too.
You know, I don't drink. I don't really go out very frequently. I don't watch TV very much. I can count on, less than 10 fingers how many shows I watch. I don't watch Game of Thrones. I don't watch anything that people are watching. I don't do that. I do spend a lot of time exercising and doing things to work on my mental health and spending time with my friends who are my world and everything. And I do try to make time to date. And I still have, so far not been, I'm single, so I haven't found my person. But I'm also right now unemployed and trying to put everything into finding a job. So I feel like I'm being told that I'm not doing it right when I'm trying my best to stay mentally stable, stay healthy physically, become financially fully independent, working on finding a new apartment because I'm going to have to move, working on finding a new job, and especially in this market is very, very difficult.
Right.
And I feel like I'm being told that I'm wrong for doing all these things if I'm not prioritizing also trying
where did I ever say anything like that? I did not say that, and I don't mean to challenge you. I'm simply saying if you feel that, then you feel it, but I'm not saying that to you. I'm not going to tell you what I didn't say. I'm saying that if you want to prioritize children, then carve out, and family, carve out some time for that. And what happens, and maybe this is a better answer for you, what happens is that a lot of women, and I've seen this decade after decade after decade, and I'm simply trying to say it's not a good proposition. Here's what happens. A woman decides not to even focus at all on a high quality man. She figures she'll just start when she's 34, after her career is all in gear. That's 9 years for you since you're 25. And then they'll be open to the idea of a great guy and everything will click. I'm telling you that game plan will lead to disappointment. That's all. All right?
So, quick follow-up question. How come it's really, I understand that women have a biological factor involved, but let's say I'm 25 and I'm doing all these things and I'm really trying to date, but then the men who are around my age, if they're not putting in the same amount of work, then that makes it so much more challenging for me as a woman. So I feel like it's just if not more important to ensure that the men are doing this as well.
Well, okay.
I have some good advice to follow up, Barak.
Okay. What's that?
I have some good advice to follow, to follow you up.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I'll be happy to hear. Let me just answer her question, then I want to hear from you, and then if you won't mind, I'll move to a different topic. You're bemoaning about the guys that are your age. If I could give you some advice on that one aspect, don't look to date guys your age. You're 25. Why not look for a guy who's 30 or 31? Right? I mean, what's wrong with that? A guy who's 30 or 31 first of all, men are far less mature for the same age than a woman is. Women are far more mature. It's a reality, just like the biological clock is a reality. The good news is women are much more mature in this age, okay? So a 31-year-old man, maybe even a little bit older, maybe a little bit younger, that's more suitable to you, and I think you'll be happier. They'll put in the time, they'll put in that work that you were talking about. Okay, so you had another question. I'm pointing to you. It's funny, I think the finger will.
I was going to say,
go ahead.
I'm furloughed, so I don't have a job. So during the day I work, but at nighttime I get lonely. So I go on all the dating apps, and I focus a lot on dating, and I have the age set to really high ages. So I'm able to talk to men. Like, I feel like I'm talking to men all the time. Like, I feel like I constantly have, like, men in my life. So.
Okay. All right. That's something.
I feel like that kind of, like, follows up with what you're saying.
Right.
Like, I'm never lonely. And, like, I don't know. Like,
right.
I love you. love you right
True.
now.
I'm 23. I'm talking to like a 35-year-old man.
Well, that might be a little too old for you.
Well,
Can I tell you a key story of my own personal life? I was 39 when I met my wife, and I was set up. I had they still had the dating sites and everything else. But it just so happened that a woman came up to me at an APAC event and said, "Are you available?" And I said, "Sure." And she talked about my now wife, and I said, "How old is she?" Remember, I was 39, and she said, "She's 25." And I said, "Okay, that's too young for me. For me, the cutoff mentally was 26, because I didn't want to be more than 13 years older than my prospective wife." So we have a nice talk on the phone anyway, because she said, "Just talk to her." We talk on the phone, she's fine. And then we agreed to meet for coffee. And she comes in, she's beautiful, she's smart, she's elegant, she's a career woman. And we seem to have similar values and everything else, but I'm so comfortable because I know there's no way we're going to date. She's too young. And at some point I say, "Well, look, you got a lot of things going on, I'm sure. You're 25, and she said, "I'm not 25. And I said, "You're not?" And she said, "I'm 27. And suddenly I became so nervous. I didn't, all of a sudden everything collapsed around me. And I was now suddenly trying to, impress her and everything else. Anyway, it ended up working out great. We did get married, and we've had 3 kids since then. So, and by the way, she's definitely as mature as I am, if not more mature than I am. So that's a 11-year difference there. Okay, if I can move on to a different topic, and that is about sex and what we can learn from sex. One of the things that I learned as I wrote this book, books change you. When you write a book, and I recommend this to everyone, if you can write a book, write it. And so there's something passionate within you, write about it. A good book that you're writing should be a book that changes you as well. This book changed me. I now understand the power of sex in a much different way that I never understood before. Before I wrote this book, and certainly when I was much younger, sex was just this fun thing, and it's great, it's necessary for babies. Ultimately, you want to have a relationship, it's all good. But at the end of the day, that's what it was. Now I see sex as something so powerful, so visceral, that we need to look at it in a very different way. Think of it, and it's going to be a funny analogy, but think of it like a plutonium rod in a nuclear facility, right? A plutonium rod looks shiny and bright and even looks like a toy, but you dare not touch it, right? You will die if you mishandle it. However, if you handle it properly, great things can happen. You can have great energy. You can create great things from a nuclear reactor, right? So it's all about handling it correctly. Something we can learn about sex. One is that we know that it's not just sex. Sex is not just sex. It triggers emotions in both sexes in a way that is so powerful. You can go on a date with somebody, you can even kiss, you can even go beyond kissing. But once sex is involved in the equation, everything changes. The question is why? Why does it change? Why does it so radically alter the relationship? People do crazy things after they've had sex, and then there's the sexual relationship, and then there's a breakup, right? There's too many examples of this. Lorena Bobbitt, you've heard that story, right? You've heard about the astronaut woman, Novak is her name. She's so jealous about somebody else coming that she, in her life, that she actually drove across country in an adult diaper so that she could not waste time to go confront this mistress that her husband was with. A lot of dangerous things start to happen when sex is involved. Here's something that the CDC will report if you have, there are 356,000, no, what am I saying? 365 million new cases of sexually transmitted diseases every year among 4 different diseases: herpes, chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis. And that doesn't include all the other sexual diseases as well, including HIV. What we do know, and the CDC actually points it out as well.
Wait, what is it? No, I mean.
Okay, the CDC points out also that monogamous sex in a healthy relationship, the more of it that you have, the better for you, the healthier for you, the psychological benefits. It's great. It's fantastic. So it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, the sexual act is still the sexual act. But somehow, if you have it with a lot of different people, it's extremely dangerous. If you have it just with one person in a monogamous relationship, it's not only not dangerous, it's extremely healthy. So you would think the CDC would report this as great news. Hey, guess what? We found great stuff. Monogamous sex, do that, right? All the other kinds of sex, don't do that. But of course the CDC is not saying that. What does this mean to us? What do we gather from this? Could it be, and it's not just biology, could it be that perhaps if we are to believe, and we all do believe in Hashem, then perhaps God is sending us a signal, saying, look, this is where I want you to go. Great things can happen if you enjoy a loving, monogamous, very intensely sexual relationship. It's good. I'll reward you. However, if you engage in, I'm not saying extramarital sex, I'm saying, because that could be monogamous too, but I'm saying if you're rampant about going out with many other people, that's dangerous. Bad things will happen. God doesn't want us to do that. Now, if you don't believe in God, I guess it doesn't matter at all. But if you don't believe in God, you should wonder to yourself, why is it that monogamous sex is so healthy and non-monogamous sex is so dangerous? It's binary. It's one thing I really want to share with a lot of you. So have that healthy relationship. Pursue it as deeply as you can, because there's nothing like it. He wants us to be deeply devoted to each other, male, female, in an intense relationship as possible. Men and women who decide that they are going to have flings here and there, just chasing orgasms, and let's face it, that's exactly what it is about, chasing orgasms. Even if somehow they manage to avoid any sort of disease whatsoever, any sort of pregnancy, it's still never the same. And for those of you who've had deeply meaningful relationships, and I'm sure a lot of you have, you know what I'm talking about. There's something very special about that sexual relationship with that very special somebody. And it's far better, far more meaningful, far more spiritual, to use a word somebody else said here, than just going from one bed to the next. All right. Now, I posed a question before, and it's a question of why is it that sex is so pleasurable? And I love this crowd because you're deeply inquisitive and you want to get yourself involved in the thing. So let's hear it. Why is it so pleasurable? Anybody? On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 30. Okay?
I think so.
Let me give an example. I mean, just to prove my point a little bit, especially for men, and of course for women, when it's non-consensual, it can be horrible. Of course, I want to take that out of the equation for the time being. I'm talking about consensual sex that you look forward to, and it's really pleasant. Okay? Why is it a 30? And to give you an example, when they asked this one astronaut who came from space, and he had he spent time, orbiting the Earth, and it was so incredible. And they asked him, how was it? And his answer, better than sex, man, better than sex. But we all know, no, it wasn't. Right? Very few things equal sex. Very few things. In fact, it's very hard to think about things. So anyway, go ahead and let me know why you think that's the case.
Molly, did you want to say something before?
I think that it's good. I've heard from a friend though, because I'm waiting till marriage. But I think that people like it because it makes them feel special and loved.
Okay.
And because it's like Hashem made two separate people and then you get put together as one.
Well, I like that. That's a good one. That's really good. Next, anybody?
And like functionally, like why did Hashem use that as a mechanism of some sort?
Yes. Well, functionally, the obvious answer is, look, you want to make it appealing because you want people to reproduce, right? And I get that answer quite often saying, well, it's so simple. People want to get, want to reproduce. Well, you got to make it enticing. But it doesn't explain why it's a 30, right? On a scale of 1 to 10. I mean, you can get me to do a lot of things if you let me go mountain biking. I love mountain biking. And my wife lets me go mountain biking, I will do a lot for her. So you don't need to get me to give me a 30 when all you need to give me is an 8.5 to reproduce, to have children. All right? You give me the spiritual message of having children, great. That's fine. And make it enjoyable, great. But that's not the main reason.
Because you're not going to turn off logic for going mountain biking, right? Like if the main goal is to populate the earth and, make more babies, then you need it to be a 30 in order to counter logical thinking.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. The great sages have an answer for this. I wish I came up with this. But the great sages will say this, and it's not just Jewish sages, it's Christian sages as well. The reason why it's a 30 is because when you are engaging in sex, certainly with the anticipation of possibly getting pregnant, you are deputies in God's act of creation. Hashem is letting you see creation. It's the only time that you create in the same way. You are his deputy. It's not that he's rewarding you. It's that you are seeing, he's letting you into what creation is. That's the reason why it's a 30. That's not my theory. Many Jewish sages have said this. And what I want to leave us with, and then maybe talk a little bit about the automation aspect of things. What I want to leave us with is to understand that people are treating sex so dismissively, peeling away only all the other stuff that goes with it, all the dangers, all the frustrations, all the hard work that goes with the relationship, so they can get to just that orgasm. But you're missing out. You're missing out on the joy of that creative aspect of it. That's where we stand. And that's where the real reason why it's 30. It's a 30. One last point I want to make. My book is called The Rise of the Sex Machines. Its basic premise is that in 10 years' time, you'll hear a lot of women saying, I lost my man to a sex machine, a sex robot. It's going to be a big deal. You may ask why that's the case. Why would I say such a bold statement? First of all, it's not so bold. There are plenty of sex robots and sex dolls out there. It's a burgeoning industry. In fact, it's part of a 30 billion sex industry right now. And I'm not just talking about pornography. I'm talking about the sex robot industry. Why is this happening? Because there's too many times that a man, especially for men, they see sex and relationships and marriage, for that matter, as a very daunting enterprise. A lot of things are changing that. We live in a Me Too world. We live in a world where a man is expected to do all sorts of amazing things. We talk a lot about women and all the expectations imposed upon them, but there are a lot of expectations imposed upon men too. And so a sex robot, from the man's point of view, you don't have to marry it. You don't have to worry about her getting older. You won't have to worry about her complaining. You won't have to worry about her changing in you in any way whatsoever. It's a form of automation. And it's more of a reflection, at the end of the day, about who we are. Ultimately, I'm kind of giving away the point of the book. It's that we have made ourselves into sex machines. By dismissing God or keeping God out of the equation, we have ourselves become sex automatons. We're chasing the orgasm and only the orgasm because it's there. It's an impulse. It's very strong. It's the most powerful instinct you can possibly imagine. And yet, if we don't treat it with the dignity and the spirituality that Hashem has given us through sex, terrible things will happen. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question actually.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, I can hear you
I
fine.
was just gonna say, there's a lot of relationships that the sex is great. You have a sexual chemistry, but you end up breaking up.
Right.
Because the emotional connection and the physical connection is maybe not up to par. So I kind of agree with you, but you can't just. I think you're just taking a unilateral view on the discussion. You're saying, okay, sex, and based on how you view sex, it's either great or bad, right? But there's so many other aspects to the relationship that affect the outcome, right?
Right.
So I think even people that have great sex or whatever, the other parts of the relationship might not be great. So I think it's just one facet to it, no?
Oh, I agree with you. I don't think that, hopefully nothing I said is in disagreement with that. Of course, it's just one facet. But I'm talking about, I think we're putting the cart before the horse in your discussion here. Your point is 100% correct. Sex isn't everything, but sex is such an important aspect of a relationship. I'm not even talking about it being great sex and you have to have perfect sexual chemistry and such. I'm talking about understanding that sex is not to be treated lightly. That's all.
Oh, okay. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes okay. That's true. I agree.
Cool.
I've got a question.
Sure.
If that's the case, that obviously sex shouldn't be treated lightly, why do you think that most people would trend towards sex robots? Aren't you avoiding the actual higher level of emotion and pleasure of being connected with somebody? Why do you assume that the majority of people will choose that over having all those other components that gives you higher pleasure?
Right. What's your name?
Jordan,
that to me was the best question I got tonight. Really, it's a fantastic question because it's a question that very few people ever ask. Why do they do that? Because it's easy, Jordan. One of my favorite chapters in the book, and in my lectures, I often give a lecture about, I say sex is hard work. It's very hard work when you think about it. All the things that you have to do. Think about what it takes for a man to understand a woman to understand a man. We are like a different species. I don't care what's going on with the whole transgender stuff and he and she and all that stuff. To me, it's there is a he and there is a she, and they're very different animals. And to be in a relationship, to truly understand, from my perspective, to understand a woman, to understand my wife, it takes years. It would be far easier for me and for you, Jordan. You want to get your sexual thrills without a woman talking to you, without having to work at it and to please her? I think the question answers itself.
That gives you less pleasure overall.
Yes.
I'm sorry to be combative, but it gives you less overall long term, and I don't think most people would just take the easy option of, oh, sex toy to have sex and be done, because you also seek the fulfillment of having a relationship in somebody else. I would think that most people
Look, we are of like mind, 100%. But the truth is that people are just flitting between one relationship to the next, and the reason for that is because it's easy. And people are divorcing, and people are breaking up because something said or didn't please them, and they just decided rather than work on it, they want to leave it. I think that's almost the default now for a lot of people. It has to be so perfect, but there's no such thing as perfect, as we all know. And working on a relationship makes it all the more powerful. I've been married to my beautiful wife of 17 years now, and we've been up and down from time to time, but we always worked at it, and it just gets better and better every year, despite those things. But there are opportunities. There were off-ramps on that freeway, from that freeway, many times. And if I didn't have Hashem in my life to help me understand that this is going to be better for you, if you stick with this, work on it. Don't take the easy way out. It is just a lot easier to give up when you don't have Hashem. Next question. Okay. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for listening. I hope it's been engaging and a little bit challenging, but it's been a real pleasure and an honor to speak with you today.